Good evening, everyone. You're in the right place at the right time. This is Coast to Coast AM, blasting out of the Mojave Desert like a Scirocco, blazing across the land, into your town, into your home, slamming into your radio like a supercharged nanoparticle of unobtainium. Greetings from the boldest, bawdiest, most outrageous city in the world, the planetary capital of sun, fun, sin, sex, and secrets, my not-so-humble hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada. My name is George Knapp, your occasional host, your designated driver of the airwaves, and moderator of tonight's upcoming cacophony of conversation. Glad to be back with you once again. You know, it's been weird here in the Mojave Desert. I've been off for the past couple of weeks, off from my day job, that is, on TV, and just puttering around the house, catching up on some reading and writing. And outside, it has been so relentlessly gloomy. For the past 4 days, we haven't seen the sun, I don't think, maybe at all. Winds blowing constantly in heavy gusts up to like 30 miles an hour. And the sky kind of looks like a scene from one of those recent post-apocalyptic movies, The Road, if you saw that one, or The Book of Eli, this relentless high gray haze. I've even had calls from people wanting to know if these might be clouds of radiation floating over our country from Japan. And it sort of fits the mood, though, as if everything around us, everyone around us is coming apart at the seams, as if the train is rolling off the tracks. You got that triple header in Japan, the massive earthquake, the killer tsunami, the still unfolding potential China syndrome situation at the nuke plants there. Estimates in the media reports today say the death toll could be 20,000. I'm betting it's going to be higher than that, aren't you? And then you have something that almost took Japan off the front page, a nice brand spanking new war in the Middle East. One that we just couldn't stay out of. More than 100 American Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from U.S. warships at Libyan military installations the very first day. This Gaddafi character is a genuine nutball. And if he's got any WMDs, any weapons of mass destruction stashed in the desert somewhere, you got to figure that he's the kind of guy who would definitely use them. Especially if he thinks he's a dead man, which he almost certainly is. And here at home, inflation creeping up to go along with unemployment and deficits, foreclosures, stagnation, gas prices going crazy, as they always do whenever anything more serious than some Arab sheikh breaking wind in a tent or they find a mouse in a refinery somewhere, always a good reason to jack up oil prices. Uncertainty in the markets, they call it. And now it's food. We posted an article on the Coast to Coast website tonight outlining why higher food prices are not only here, but are probably here to stay. You know, we're spending billions of tax dollars going to grain-producing states to produce ethanol that does nothing to help our energy situation, might even be worse overall, but it's great news for big agribiz conglomerates. And the result is that corn prices are heading for the roof. So, you know, even if it isn't gloomy and cloudy in the skies where you are right now, I'd say there's plenty to be gloomy about. As always, Webmaster Lex and I have put together a smattering of news stories from around the world, sort of a snapshot of the world at this moment. Among the stories listed there are two that I think are of relevance to tonight's program. One article is about the international weapons trade, the fact that India is now the biggest importer of weapons in the world. The U.S., of course, is far and away the biggest exporter of weapons. Nice to know we still make something that the world wants to buy, right? Also there is a piece about the high cost of nuclear weapons and what our country is prepared to spend over the next few years upgrading our nuclear arsenal, as if we could ever, under any circumstances, deploy them. I know it's all about deterrence. Stay strong so we never have to use them. That argument is sort of central to the discussion that we're going to be having the first 2 hours tonight. Journalist Bill Hartung has written a new book called Prophets of War. It was 50 years and 2 months ago that departing President Dwight Eisenhower issued his famous warning to the country in his farewell address to the nation. We have the original video posted on the website if you want to see it as the speech was delivered. And I think the words are chilling when you realize what has happened to our country in the 5 decades since then. The warning was about the military-industrial complex and the threat that it poses to our basic liberties and our democratic system. And if anybody should know about that, it should be Ike Eisenhower, General Eisenhower. If you've ever wondered what happened to the military-industrial complex that Ike warned about, William Hartung says he knows exactly where it went. It is largely concentrated in a single mega conglomerate that has used threats, bribery, coercion, lies, and corrupt practices to keep the billions in government contracts rolling in. And there are consequences for all of us, not just financial consequences either. Bill Hartung will join us for the first 2 hours tonight to talk about issues that could not be more timely, especially of what's going on in Libya and Afghanistan and still Iraq and right here at home. In hours 3 and 4, we will switch gears. We'll learn about the consequences of belief systems. Rahasya Poe has written a new book. It's called To Believe or Not to Believe, which explores how we develop belief systems and how these beliefs can hold us back as a species, interfering with what he says is the evolution of our consciousness. It's heady stuff, so put on a pot, pull up a chair, and let's get ready to rumble. Time now for our first break. When we come back, Bill Hartung and the Prophets of War. I'm George Knapp, and this is Coast to Coast AM. William Hartung is the Director of Arms and Security Initiative at the New America Foundation, which is a project that serves as a resource for journalists, policymakers, and citizens organizations on the issues of weapons proliferation, the economics of military spending, and alternative approaches to national security strategy. He's written for all of the major news organizations, Washington Post, LA Times, New York Times, and he's the author of numerous books, including his latest work, Prophets of War, Lockheed Martin and the Making of the Military-Industrial Complex. Bill Hartung, glad to have you on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I read your book this weekend. It's just excellent. It's very well documented all the way through, very thorough, but not exactly real cheery. It occurred to me that the title could be Prophets of War, prophets being like the word for seers, or it could be Profits of War, as in dollars and cents. Either one seems to work just fine.
Yes, that's right. Well, I think there's kind of a connection between the two. I was sort of thinking about the way that the company at various points in its history has lobbied for war, which it then benefits from. And so I think that was kind of the reason for the kind of, double meaning.
I want you to give us a general premise of the book in a nutshell, but using this as the context for the premise. I want the audience to understand that your criticism is bipartisan, that involves basically every president since the Cold War, every Congress, not just Republicans or Democrats, but both major parties sharing the blame for what you're about to describe that's transpired, for allowing this one company and others to basically run amok.
Well, yes. The company started as a small operation. There were two brothers who worked out of a garage in San Francisco to build their first plane. And it went bankrupt a couple times in its early years. Didn't really get traction until World War II. And this is sort of what Eisenhower talked about, how, there are times when we need defense industry to deal with threats, but that it's grown to the point where it affects not only our budget, but in some cases kind of the whole tenor of our democracy. And so a company like Lockheed Martin over the years has used, I think as you mentioned, they've been involved in corrupt bargains, cost overruns, bribery of foreign officials, not bribery, but certainly influence peddling in terms of their influence on our own elected officials, and now kind of a growth into almost every area of our life. So not only do they work for the Pentagon, but they design nuclear weapons for the Department of Energy. They do work with the National Security Agency, spy satellites. They work for the CIA. They work for the FBI, the IRS, the Census Bureau. So they've become kind of this all-purpose government contractor which has access to all kinds of private information, intelligence information. They're kind of not only a weapons maker, but kind of a surveillance and information gathering company. So the question is, as Eisenhower questioned, how much power should one company or one set of companies have in the context of what's supposed to be free market democracy?
You have any theories on what what prompted him to make that warning? Was there one event, or what did he see that led him to make those dramatic statements?
Well, there were a few things. One was the bomber lobby. There was a group of Air Force generals, Air Force personnel, contractor executives who wanted to build a new bomber, the B-70. Eisenhower felt we already had significant capability in that area, that there were other places to spend the money, both on defense and domestically, and also to keep the budget in balance with the rest of the economy. So he was very heavily lobbied, including by some of his own officials who sort of talked out of school. They were supposed to be reporting to him, but they were lobbying for this bomber against his wishes. He also was offended by the early efforts of the companies to advertise their wares. He felt like they were supposed to be basically taking their marching orders from decisions by the government about what we needed for security, but they were trying to kind of whip up interest by using advertising in not only specialty magazines like Aviation Week and Space Technology, but even major newspapers like the New York Times. And so that was another element of what he was concerned about. And then just he very much wanted to keep the budget on a somewhat even keel, and he was concerned that this push for more military spending was going to put it out of whack and therefore have a negative influence on our economy.
Well, the way you have described Lockheed and how it's operated over the last couple of decades, it sure sounds like it's exactly what he was warning us about.
I think, if anything, slightly more dangerous, just because larger than anything he could have imagined. The military budget is about twice what it was when Eisenhower was in office. And because the company is tapping into so many other areas of government spending, it's broader, it's got larger reach, larger tentacles, if you will, than the companies that he was dealing with back in his day.
I'll have to share with you my own impressions of Lockheed. When I think of Lockheed, I think of the Skunk Works, and you go into that amazing period in Lockheed's history. These guys, these scientists and engineers with slide rules, and they all get together in a building and create these amazing things. A lot of them were based right here in Nevada at Groom Lake, Area 51. The U-2, which, as you note in the book, came in under budget and ahead of time. The SR-71, which is my favorite plane of all time. The F-117, which has done a lot of good stuff. I mean, that company has done some tremendous things. So my general observation was fairly positive about Lockheed until I read this, and I would say it's spooky.
Well, I think you raise a good point in the sense that they have achieved some amazing feats in terms of technical aspects of some of their airplanes, which then gave us capabilities that no other country in the world had, be it stealth technology, be it the ability to monitor the Soviet Union with the U-2 spy plane. But at some point, I think it took a wrong turn, and it had to do with the just becoming kind of a money pit and really getting more involved in